Our Never Mind the Gap, How to Brand Yourself After a Break. My name is Bree Reynolds, and I'm the Director of Online Content at FlexJobs. And we're very pleased to be hosting this webinar today with Raquel Ellison. Raquel is an executive career coach, organizational development consultant, and work-life advocate. She's the founder of Reworking Parents, where she's coached hundreds of mid- and senior-level executives through work and life transitions. She also partners with organizations and works with teams to manage stress and maximize innovations. And her writing, you may have seen, has been featured on Forbes, Maybrooks, Smart Brief, Workforce, and Monster Thinking. She's also, in case you're on Twitter, one of the top work-life experts to follow, so you can follow her at Reworking Parent on Twitter. And we're super pleased to have Raquel here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Bree. I'm so excited to be here. Welcome, everyone, to Never Mind the Gap, How to Brand Yourself After a Break. I wanted to start out by thanking you for being here and thanking FlexJobs. I'm so proud to be part of this 100 Days of Jobs for Moms event. Sorry about that. I just clicked ahead. So I'm excited to talk about this topic because it's one that I've heard covered a lot. But I wanted to approach it a bit differently. I hear this time and time again from parents who come from various different industries and levels of experience, parents who want to return to work, but whether they've been out of work for 5 months or 5 years, the idea of getting back out there to get a job is paralyzing. And the gap on the resume seems like a scarlet letter in the process. So what we're going to talk about today is why you, as a parent today, are uniquely positioned to reinvent your career right now. In this economy, you have an advantage. And I've read the research and seen this in my work repeatedly. I know that Parenthood can be an asset to your professional development. So as Bree said in my introduction, my background is in organizational consulting. And after years of organizational consulting, I began Reworking Parents to address the unique concerns that parents face as they return to work, which include career transition and finding work-life fit. When I coach, I'm integrating the latest research of work-life best practices, of individual career development and strategy, as well as leadership development. And I started Reworking Parents because I believe that we model work behaviors for our kids, and the way we approach and balance our work and life will inform the way our kids shape their own decisions about work and family. So we're going to start out with a quiz. What is your biggest obstacle to getting a job right now? So we're going to ask you guys to vote on this. I'm sorry, not a quiz, but a poll. I called it a quiz in my presentation. But is the hardest challenge how to talk about it, how to talk about your choice to be staying home with your kids? Is it about finding the right job to meet your skills? Is it your concern that your family won't be able to function without you in the role that you're in right now? Is it a concern that your skills are out of date and you need to learn new ones? Or is it that you've tried and nothing's working? So I just wanted to get a sense from you guys. So we'll wait for you to.
Yep, and it looks like the responses are coming in.
Okay.
Haven't taken it yet and you're attending, please feel free to choose your response to the poll right on the screen. And while everybody's signing or sort of weighing in here on the poll, I'll just say that we are going to do a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. It'll be probably the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the questions box on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will answer as many as we can at the end. But let's see. It looks like the results are pretty much in. We're about 86% going already. And for the most part, it looks like 34% say B, finding the right job is the biggest obstacle, and followed by D, skills are out of date is 26%. So it looks like those are the two biggest ones so far.
Got it. Well, thank you, Bree. So I am not surprised by either of those responses. I hear all of these responses all the time. But we are going to tackle finding the right job, and the skills question. We're actually going to tackle all of these. in the rest of our presentation. So I'm so excited to dive right in. So there's one major factor that stands in the way of getting the job you want, and it's mindset. I didn't always think this was the case. I fell into this way of thinking. I literally fell into it, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But today I believe, as I said earlier, in evidence-based ideas and advice. I'm not coming to you, I'm not a very navel-gazing frou-frou person. This is based on research, and this has been proven repeatedly. You need to be able to see real possibilities and solutions to make your career work in this economy. And I love this quote by Whitney Johnson here because she has such a brilliant and amazing story. She says achieving goals isn't as much about gaining credentials or training as it is believing in possibilities. And Whitney was a music major turned secretary on Wall Street, turned investment banker, turned hedge fund founder and author. And success today is about independence, it's about evolution and ingenuity and out-of-the-box thinking, and Whitney is a great example of that. So I'm really thrilled to share her quote, and her book is wonderful as well. So the researcher who's done the best work on this, who really has proven this theory, is someone named Dr. Carol Dweck. She's done over 20 years of research on the importance of mindset, and she found that the biggest predictor of long-term happiness and success in work and in life was this mindset factor. And she usually sees two types. Not usually, always sees two types, the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The fixed mindset is basically an all-or-nothing mentality. So here's the fixed mindset approach when applied to our conversation. When you think about yourself and what's going on internally, the fixed mindset says this is an uphill battle, I just have to plug harder, I need to retrain or just take what I can get in an economy with diminishing job security, market instability, lack of institutional and organizational governmental support for working mothers, and just overwhelm, crazy overwhelm. And the growth mindset is a bit different. The growth mindset, and this is the one that Carol Dweck advocates that all of us can learn. It's those who stretch themselves, who take risks, who accept feedback, and who take the long-term view, see major progress in their lives and careers. And she says you are in charge of your mind. You can help it grow by using it the right way. So we're going to take a little quiz right now. What I'd like you to do, we're not going to have you vote. I just want you to look at the screen. And in this quiz, we're going to look at the different statements and see which ones you agree with more. Number one, you are a certain kind of person, and there's not much that can really be done to change that. Number two, no matter what kind of person you are, you can always change substantially. Number three, you can do things differently, but the important parts of who you are can't really be changed. And four, you can always change basic things about the kind of person that you are. So without going into this too much, it's very clear that the odd-numbered column and the even-numbered column reflect two different kinds of thinking. And the even-numbered column is really the growth mindset, to think about possibilities for change and the opportunities for change. So what Carol Dweck reminds us when we talk about growth mindset is that our brains and our abilities are like muscles, and they can be strengthened with practice. So we're going to skip ahead, but I wanted to hit that mindset point very hard because it's very important. One of the skills that, Parenthood is a skill, right? And it does do quite a number on us in terms of mindset shift, and it does impact us at work. I see Parenthood as a tool that teaches us about change management and about social intelligence. Whether it's sleep training, discipline, or play, your kids always need you to accommodate their changing needs at a breakneck pace. You You also build your social and emotional intelligence as a parent and develop an expert ability to problem solve and multitask. In a way, becoming a parent is a disruptive innovation for your work and life. For almost all of us, parenthood makes us rethink who we are and what's important to us. And in that case, can be an asset in terms of building a long and engaging and fulfilling career. I love this quote from Manoush Zomorodi, who was a client of mine and a host on PRIW NYC's public radio station. And she says, "Motherhood made me realize you can be good at lots of things. Why not choose the thing you really care about and blow those out of the water?" And I think that's really important. We tend to, before having kids, many of us are just very focused at being the best at everything and pleasing everyone as much as we can in our work. And motherhood, for Manoush and for many of us, helps us recognize what our true strengths are and helps us focus on those strengths. So I wanted to talk a little bit more, find out a little bit more about this. So I surveyed hundreds of working parents, including my clients and colleagues online, about how parenthood helped them function in the workplace. And psychologist Diane Gottlieb hypothesized that parenting actually encourages us to live in a multidimensional space. We learn to play multiple roles at once, and that actually boosts our growth, and both professionally and personally. And what I've learned, and what I learned from these surveys of my clients, is parenthood helps you learn to tune out the noise of professional life, the sort of office politics, and sort of unessentials, and focus on the essentials. You minimize distractions. You increase productivity and efficiency by doing that. It also helps people become better managers, better conflict resolvers. They become better at adaptation. All of these are things we've learned as parents. I've got some other quotes from some of the people who I surveyed that speak to this. One of my clients said, "I remain passionate and committed, but less emotionally embroiled. I take things less personally. I know how to work smarter and faster, and I keep my staff on task more effectively. I'm results-driven with a new level of efficiency." So I think that's really important. So before we move forward into more job search technical stuff, and I promise we're going to get into strategies, we're going to get into case studies, we're going to get into tips, I want you to take a moment to write down how parenthood has made you a better professional. And I just want you to take it, write it down in your notebook, write it down on a piece of paper. It's an important thing for you to recognize, even if you haven't been back into the workforce yet, how you could see, yes, Rochelle, this isn't a totally crazy theory. I could see how parenting could make me a better professional. And it could be as simple as this. This is from a client. Basically, being a mom allows me to be more of myself at work, which makes me more productive. So I love that quote. All right. So now we're going to move into a framework for really understanding how this applies to our professional life and career reinvention. Because that's what it is. It's not reentry, it's reinvention. My favorite thinker about this is a woman named Herminia Ibarra. She wrote a book called Working Identity. She's a business school professor. And she says, forget about moving in a straight line. She also, by the way, did a longitudinal study of 40-plus professionals who went through major career changes. And she really documented the process by which they made that change. So this is coming from her research that's quite in-depth. So here's what her perspective is basically telling us. It's saying it's a journey. It's not a job. She proposes a model that's very different from what traditional career coaches talk about. She talks about a test and learn approach in which action trumps the true self approach. So a lot of coaches we'll talk about digging into your values to figure out who you really are, or analyzing your past job experiences to the letter to try to help you predict the future. And I think you can dig all you want into the past, but the present is changing too much to rely on that as an answer. In this strategy, the goal is to try on alternative work identities to find the most satisfying fit for who you are right now. So in the reinventing process, we make two different kinds of changes. We make small adjustments in course. So we make small habitual changes, and then we make deeper shifts in perspectives that come with time. So here's what this looks like, as you can see on the slide. Work life, as we know it, you are your last job title. So whatever it was before you had kids, that is what you go by when you think about your job application process. In reworking parenthood, you are crafting experiments to see what's going to be the best fit for your skills right now. In the past, work life as we know it, you network with existing contacts in your field or in your past field, and that's where you focus most of your energy. In reworking parenthood, you're shifting your connections to find new possibilities and opportunities wherever they might come up. In work life as we know it, your resume tells your past and can predict your career future. In reworking parenthood, you have to make sense of your story. It's about your resume, but it's about multiple things and multiple ways of presenting yourself and how you make yourself a marketable force in this economy. So we're going to start with craft experiments. As parents, we're constantly experimenting. Parenting is the perfect example of a situation that forces us to do the unfamiliar, to get good at it, and then incorporate it into who we are. We can't wait to be experts first. We have to jump in without much, if any, preparation. So think beyond the last job title about ways that you can try out new experiences. You have to sort of act your way into a new way of thinking and being. Identify projects that can help you get a feel for a new line of work or a style of working. Think about ways you'd like to push yourself. As you explore these options, you're going to discover values and preferences and what makes you unique and marketable. Just to make sure that you vary those experiments so that you can compare and contrast before you narrow your options. So I'm going to go into detail on what this looks like. Crafting experiments. Before I jump into this diagram, I love this quote by Katharine Hepburn: "Life is to be lived. If you have to support yourself, you would bloody well better find some way that's going to be interesting." I love that. Who knew? She had great career advice. So we're going to jump into this diagram. This is what I talk to my clients about. These are the different types of experiments. So I know that the idea of crafting experiments can seem really abstract. This is actually very specific. So the task, what do you really want to be doing with your time? What are you good at? You might have been in finance before, but you really love planning your kids' parties. If you love that event management, maybe that's an experiment that you want to look into doing. That's the task that you want to do. What role best suits you? Are you a natural convener of people in your community? Are you a good manager, a good coach? Are you, what's the role that best suits your strengths? And I work with my clients in depth on this. The context, not every context is the same. What would be a good one for you? Are you looking for a very modern environment, very young, very youthful culture? Are you looking for, a place where is it important to you to have access to high-level leadership? Is it important to you to work in person or remotely, which gets more into the flexibility question? What do you want? What do you like to do? And what do you want to do in terms of flexibility? How would you ideally like to structure your time? And income, what are the basic needs that you need to meet? For some of us, as we get back in and craft these experiments, volunteering and interning is a good option. For others of us, it's not an option at all. We need to be earning to meet childcare costs. So what are the basic needs, and how can you anticipate those? And for each of these experiments, it's important to think about these things. And like I said, they evolve with time. So we're going to get into, in practice, a resume tip. So what I like to remind my clients is this is not the first time you've experimented with something. You've tried little projects and side ideas before. So don't leave things off a resume that reflect your skills and talents just because they haven't been part of a formal job title. And we can talk about ways in the question and answer period of how to integrate that. And I advocate that people use the STAR method. So really, in order to outline what these specific, it's important that you point to accomplishments with each of these skills. So what was the situation where you used these skills? What was the task? What were the accomplishments and what were the results? And those last two pieces, the accomplishments and the results, that's what should be incorporated into the resume. So I'm going to give a case study of one of my clients, Daria. When she came to me, she crafted some experiments, and I'm going to show you how it worked out for her. So when she came to me, she had been 4 years out of full-time work. She'd only been doing project work, some corporate writing. She described herself as having old world media skills in a new media era. She had had journalism background, done some corporate writing, but what she wanted to experiment with she had three different sort of ideas around the experiments that she wanted. One, in terms of context, we are based in Brooklyn. She was really interested in the digital startup culture here. There's an area near us called Digital Dumbo. She was interested in it. She wanted to see how she could work in it. In terms of role, she had not done a lot of management. She had done some. She really wanted to expand that role. So she was looking for opportunities to do that. And in terms of task, she was inspired by a lot of children's content apps, children's related educational materials. So she explored those different options, and what she ended up finding was a position as a digital content director in a startup culture, where she was doing some management, and she was working in a culture that she thought was pretty cool. The process of going through this career reinvention helped her recognize her strengths as a storyteller, as a manager, built her confidence. She was able to identify her goals and reframe her skills. So that's a case study of how doing these experiments can really work. Obviously, she didn't end up doing a lot of children's content, but that's okay. It's about finding out where these different interests and possibilities could lead you in terms of job opportunities. Okay, so we're going to move on to shifting connections. And the key here is to meet people outside of your usual crowd. Look beyond who and what you know. So what I like about this picture, this, by the way, is Eleanor Roosevelt and Lucille Ball. You can see that this interaction looks already a bit awkward. These are not two people who hung out together all that much. But it's important that you find people who are a little bit outside of your comfort zone. You need to break out of your established network and look for role models, people who give you glimpses of what you might like to, the kind of lifestyle or work and life fit you'd like to have, and look at people who are different living examples of what that might look like. most of us, when we're looking for a new job, we're not only looking to change what we're doing every day, we also aspire to work with people we like and respect and enjoy spending time with. So we're going to talk about expanding your network of contacts beyond your usual circles. So shift connections. The best way to learn where we want to go at any given time is through other people. Interactions help us combine new and old interests and change ways of thinking and make our lives a whole lot more rewarding and inspiring. Through our kids, we meet tons of new people every day. And we see them on the playground, and it's really easy to forget how much they have going on in their professional and personal lives outside of the context in which we see them. So what I'm going to tell, the first shifting connections task is to start with 4. We're actually going to start with 2. We're going to talk about the offline connections. So we're going to start with, high familiarity and low interest. Who are the people who know you really well? You might not have a lot in common with them in terms of your professional interests, but they might be a great place to start, a comfortable place to start. So think about that mom you've known from birthing class. You've only talked about your kids. You've known her for a long time, or that dad you've known for a long time. You know each other well. You haven't talked much about work. But her insights or his insights are invaluable. He or she might not have contacts who are directly applicable to what you're interested in, but they know you. He or she knows you well. Then think about a mom or a dad that you always see at drop-off or near you on the playground, who you've overheard talking about stuff that seems really interesting, and pursue a conversation with them. I was talking to one client about this, and was introducing her to another parent who might have some who might be able to help her with an experiment she was considering, which was architecture going independently. And she said, well, why would he want to talk to me? What can I offer him? I'm not applying for a job. And the truth is, I can't think of a parent today who doesn't need the occasional help with something. And one thing I pointed out to her was that his daughter will soon go through the kindergarten application process that her son just went through. He's overwhelmed. You can help him with that. It's about building reciprocity. That's what networking is about. And as parents, we certainly can always, as I said, use some help. So online is a really important thing too. A lot of us, assume that the Facebook, Twitter, everything is really just about socializing. It's not. They really do matter. I love this quote from Maura Ahrens-Mille: career progression will be interrupted by caregiving. At some point, building an online brand can really change the game. I believe that. I love this quote for that reason. Maura is a founder of Women Online, and she does a lot of marketing to women and to men. So there's 3 phases to this. Really explore, go out and go on Twitter, go on LinkedIn, find people who are doing professional things you find cool and interesting. You may have no connection to them, but start following them and look at the hashtags they're using, follow their conversations. Then find someone who seems to just have an interesting perspective on life in general and find out what they're doing for a living. It's interesting to look for different paths and make these different connections. And building your brand online helps as well. So really, LinkedIn, some people think of LinkedIn as just an extension of their resume. It's not. It's another forum. There's all these different forums for which to build your online brand. So think about that. Think about me. And also use online tools to help you stay connected. I have no bonus from Contactually for mentioning them, but I find this service really useful. It helps remind me, there's so many different people in my life online. It helps remind me to stay in touch with these people, and I think that's really important, the sort of frequency of connection and remembering even just to reach out to people you do know and to kind of explore those relationships further. So in terms of shifting connections, I'm going to give you some resume tips, and when I say resume tips, I'm really talking about LinkedIn as sort of a part of your resume toolkit. This is a great quote from the LinkedIn CEO, but what you should pay attention to that people often don't are these 4 things. I think looking at, if you do nothing else, look at the people that you are interested in, or some contacts on LinkedIn who are doing things that might be of interest to you. What groups are they a part of? How can you, should you join those groups to find out more, see what conversations they're having? Excuse me. Be sure to put out your skills, skills that you have. If we can get into that in more detail in the question and answer, but I think there's a lot of different options in LinkedIn that you can choose and are worth adding to your profile. Make sure to get recommendations, even if it's not from a formal professional experience. It might be from a project that you worked on with another parent. These matter. It's about building your profile. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of how this has worked in practice. And what I really like about these examples is I'm comparing someone who had been out of the workforce for only 6 months and someone who had been out for 9 years. So when Iris and Sarah came to me, Iris had just been laid off from a startup, and she had a bit of a varied resume. She had sort of parlayed a career in journalism into a career in advertising. And in terms of Sarah, Sarah had been she'd been a teacher for many years, and then her son, she left the workforce, and for 9 years she was basically an advocate for her son who had special needs. She was a volunteer at many community organizations, and they both had very similar attitudes coming in. They felt very stuck, and they felt a very strong lack of confidence. Iris said, I have no confidence I could get the job I want. Sarah said, I'm unqualified for any job. I'm basically unemployable. And this quote is from Iris at the end of her process below. And shifting connections, the after, so that was the before, the after, Iris really worked on building her personal brand online. She developed her expertise around digital strategy, which is something she had done. Again, there's a lot of digital themes, I guess, in Brooklyn, but she had been focusing on, she had done a digital campaign she really liked, so she got involved in conversations on that topic, and built a community and built her reputation around that. And Sarah reached out to her network, people she served on boards with, people in her community, and let them know what she was interested in and what her strengths were, and sort of had a lot of informal conversations about different job possibilities. And then the results, Iris was able to, she got a position as Group Creative Director for Digital. It was a big jump for her. She was able to double her salary from her previous job. And Sarah was a development officer at a school. She got a position at a private school in her area as a development officer, and she was able to leverage her connections in the community and some of the skills that she had built. So I think those are 2 really good examples. And this is another quote about parenting skills. Now that I'm a parent, I can see that I'm better at calming down people, finding conflict resolution, putting things into a healthier perspective. So this is me again. These are pictures taken by a client of mine. So I'm very happy about them. This is the most important piece is to talk about your body of work. It's really about how you make sense of your story. And you have to remember that this is an iterative process. Mindset is key. Think about the skills that you've built and that you're continuing to build on a daily basis. And you don't want to wait for that cataclysmic moment when the truth comes out, because it's not going to work that way. You need to use what you learn every day to find meaning in the changes that you're going through. And you have to practice telling and retelling your stories. Over time, they'll get clearer. And I love this, when you think about retelling your stories, one of the best writers and speakers on this topic right now is a woman named Pamela Slim, and she talks about thinking about your brand and your career history and what the skills that you're bringing to the table right now as your body of work. She says, focusing on building a body of work will give you more freedom and clarity to choose different work options through the course of your life, and you'll be able to connect your different accomplishments and sell yourself and reinvent and relaunch your brand. That's really key. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. In practice, what does this mean? So making sense in practice means that you need to ask yourself some questions. We talked about what the experiments could look like, but you really need to know and be able to speak to what motivates and excites you. What do you really want to learn? What strengths and skills are you most proud of? And how does the total sum of my experiences give me a unique competitive advantage and value add? And again, mindset plays a huge role here. And external questions. This quote is from Bridget Schulte. She wrote a book called Overwhelmed, which just came out, which I highly recommend. And she says, ambiguity is the enemy in a workplace that fuels the overwhelm. Define your mission, set clear parameters and performance measures to lay out how much is enough. When is it good enough? Communicate, adjust. So this applies a lot to people who are already back in the workforce, but this is a really good tip. Think about think about the challenges that potential employers and potential colleagues are facing. Think about, what is a sign of good performance, and how can it be recognized? And how can you leverage your background and experience to help these employers and colleagues overcome the challenges that they're facing? How can I or you deliver tremendous measurable value to the people you want to work with? And how can you speak directly to their concerns about, the skills that you might not have or the gap in your resume by focusing on how you can solve their problems right now? So the way that your story will take shape is going to depend a lot on what means the most to you. And this is a great, the book How Remarkable Women Lead. I'm realizing there's an error there in the author names, but I can correct that for you later if you have questions about that. But it's really, they document in their research the importance of finding meaning. And so when you tell your story, it's about connecting, defining moments. What are the biggest moments in your life, and what do they mean to you? How can you recognize that deeper meaning? These defining moments involve choices you've made in your life in which your values are revealed, shaped, and put to the test. These episodes create clarity about the things that matter to you, about what you're committed to. So just pick, as you think about what your story looks like, pick a defining moment or series of moments in your life that you're proud of, and write a sort of story about it to get you to where you are in your work life. And look it over. Is it optimistic? Does it reflect all your strengths? If not, review and try it again. But the storytelling in today's day and age, that's really important. So in practice, how do you apply this? How do you tell your story in the interview? And I want to point again, I'm back to Herminia Ibarra. This is a Harvard Business Review article that she wrote. Creating and telling a story that resonates helps us believe in ourselves. So do your research on whatever person or company you're talking to. Tell an authentic and engaging story. I had a client call and say, my interviews, they're okay, but they're not going so well. This was in our first call, and when we delved a little bit deeper, it was because she really wasn't excited about the way she was presenting herself, and the skills that she was presenting weren't really engaging to her. So she needed to connect the dots in her story confidently, and she needed to spend some time doing that. And like we said a bit earlier, don't apologize for the gaps. Talk about the value add. So we will get into that in the question and answer. So actually, we're going to come back to this. So we're going to go, I want to, as a illustration of this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and how I make sense of it. So my background was, as we said, as an organizational development practitioner and work-life researcher. My defining moment was motherhood, but it was actually my crash landing into working motherhood. When I had my daughter, I just completed an organizational development project, a survey that felt like a primer on working parenthood. It was analyzing, looking at organizations and their work-life solutions. And I was convinced that I had a clear understanding of what life would be like, and if I just followed a fixed path, that I would really be able to make things work out the way that I wanted them to. And that's not quite how it worked out. Right as I was about to go back to work as in an internal consulting role, I fell. My daughter was 2.5 months old. I fell and was immobilized for many months in bed and had to really, I hit bottom in a certain way. And I had to think about, how am I going to rebrand myself? How am I going to earn the income that I need for my family? How am I going to pivot in a way? Because going back into the job that I thought I would have is not going to happen at this day and age, in this time, sorry. So I started to craft some experiments. I looked at, when I was actually doing the research on work and life in the work-life field, it didn't actually connect with me. It was only after the fact that I said, hey, I did this really cool experiment. I did this really cool research, rather, and I wonder what it would be like to really dive a bit deeper into this field. So I did. I reached out I sent a mass email to my colleagues and friends. I said, look, I'm here stranded in bed. I'm looking to start conversations about the work-life field. If you know anyone who's interested or who knows more about it, let me know. And part of that also came from listening to people who I'd met from birthing class and before I'd fallen, moms who were going back to work and seeing how these challenges were playing out in the workforce, that work life was becoming a real challenge on a daily basis. I also reached out to people I met on Twitter. Some of my closest professional colleagues are people who I just asked for a few minutes of their time for a call or a chat. And since then, they've led me in directions that I couldn't have imagined before. And I have since created this practice that's focused on work-life strategy for organizations and career strategy for parents. And it's real. It's my job. You know, it's gone through many iterations. You know, there have been setbacks for sure, but my mindset has been, since that defining moment, that, you know, this is a process of growing and learning, and we continue to do that and look for opportunities to do the work that we want to do and earn money doing it. So the conclusion that I want to review what we've spoken about here, and then we're going to take questions. So what we want to remember is the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, and the difference between those two and the importance of having the growth mindset. we also want to think about the advantage that parents have in the new economy. Really think about what I said and what you wrote down in terms of the advantage that parenthood can bring, and work that through in your head. How break that down a little bit more. How does that play out, and how can that play out in your work? Practice reinvention. Think about, or forget about, moving in a straight line. Think about small steps and deep shifts in perspective. Craft experiments. Follow your interests in task, role, in context, and try to find something that's going to work for you. And remember that not all of them will, but some combination of them will work for you. Shift connections. Your best connections are, your best resources are pushing the next swing. These people are parents in your community who can definitely enlighten you about where you can go from here and what possibilities and options they've already checked out. And then, again, forget about moving in a straight line. It's not going to work that way. So that is my spiel, as they say. You can learn more at rachelellison.com about the work that I do, and at FlexJobs.com about the work that they do, which you already know is wonderful. So great, I'm going to open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Raquel, for all of the wonderful insights. And I want to jump right in, actually, kind of what you were talking about just now and earlier with the fixed mindset and how you sort of need to move from that to an open mindset. And a person, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, it has been out of work for a number of years due to layoffs, and for other people on the call who are out of work because they've stayed home with kids or something like that. The mindset that this person is feeling right now is sort of fear, fear about finding a new job, about the whole process, that sort of thing. What are some tips that you have for changing your mindset and to staying positive in a job search when it can be so stressful?
That's a great question. So I think, that's something that comes up a lot for my clients. And sorry, I was just going to skip to, can we change screens actually, Bree?
Sure, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
That way I can move things around on my screen because I wanted to give some examples. Great. Okay, so I think that's a key question, and it is really scary. And I think the most important piece, there's a book that I recommend called Switch, How to Make Change When Change is Hard. We've talked a lot about mindset today, but I want to get into one specific, we've talked about fixed versus growth, and they actually they incorporate the fixed versus growth theories in their book, Switch. But one of the other theories they talk about is a theory called the happiness hypothesis that John Haidt, a psychologist named John Haidt, proposed. And it's really we basically need to think of our mind as rational, and there's a rational side and there's an emotional side. And the metaphor he uses to explain that is an elephant and a rider. So our emotional side is the elephant, which is really overwhelming, and the rational side is the rider, the little guy riding on top of the elephant. So what's really, it is the first thing that we want to do is we want to motivate the elephant to get beyond that fear, right? And then shape the path, so make it as easy as possible for our rational selves to kind of continue to move forward. So what we do is, what I think is the first way to direct the rider in this situation is to find bright spots. So other people, I wonder, other people who were laid off from your company, or other people who've gone through a process of having to find a new job after a layoff, who has been successful in that effort, talk to them, get some insights on that. Think about what you're doing or what you've done in the past that was able to make you feel like you were building momentum around your job search. Think about, make the changes that you need to make very specific. So, give yourself a task every day of maybe crafting, look at the crafting experiments task, what's one thing that you want to explore, what's one person that you want to reach out to. Give yourself very small, manageable goals on a daily basis to make you feel that you're making that process and that momentum move forward, if that makes sense.
I love that idea. Yeah, sort of breaking it up into those, get a job is a huge goal, and it's a great goal to have, but breaking it up into those small steps so that you really do feel like every day you're doing something to get there. I know that helps me a lot, day-to-day stuff. So,
absolutely.
We have a lot of people who are inquiring about career change and how easy or difficult is it to make a career change, and I know that's probably pretty contingent on what you're trying to change into, but just kind of some general tips for people who are considering career change.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think really, just to go back to what I've outlined in the presentation, I think to think about it, and even just the question we just answered, right? I mean, take a big change and just break it down into the smaller steps. It's not about what Herminia Ibarra does in her book that I love, which is this profile of 40 different career changers, or data gathered from 40 different career changers, is, she takes an example as someone who was a literature professor at a university who found a career in finance. And, if you think about that on paper, that's a huge switch, right? But it is really just a series of very small steps. She had a lot of different conversations. She learned through those conversations what questions to ask, what questions not to ask. I think the most important piece of advice, to sum it up, is to say it is a long process. It is a worthwhile process. I believe that if you feel motivated to make a career change, you should do it. I think it's about mindset. It's about patience. But this is the right instinct. If you have that instinct, follow it.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing, is if you're thinking about it, it's probably the right thing for you. I feel like that's the general rule there. And so one person actually has a question about part-time versus full-time work and kind of how you approach that. Emily here says, given my own needs and desires and the schedule of others in my family, I can realistically only work part-time, ideally no more than 20 to 25 hours per week. There seems to be very little part-time work available in my area. She was advised by someone to go ahead and apply for full-time positions, but then discuss part-time work if she makes it to the interview. Excuse me. But she feels like that would be false advertising. And what is your take on that, to sort of apply to those full-time positions and then in the interview bring up the possibility of part-time or flexible work?
Well, I like your instincts, Emily. I have to agree. First of all, I'm going to plug FlexJobs because I think you can find a lot of great opportunities, telecommuting opportunities, part-time telecommuting opportunities on their website. So I think it's worthwhile to look there. But I do think, of course, that if there's a job that you see advertised at full-time, I wouldn't go into the interview. I think if you were looking for some change in hours, maybe if you needed 1 day a week off, you were looking to make it 32 instead of 40, that's a different switch. If you're looking to go from 40, approximately, to 20, you're going to have time, it's not something you sort of bring up in the interview process. But I think that does, just out of the blue, but I think it does lend itself to a process of looking for work where, you are doing it a bit more organically through connections and looking for opportunities that are out there, and making it clear, to the people you're talking to right up front, I'm looking for a job that's 20 to 25 hours a week. And that way people start filtering opportunities your way. They might flow at a bit of a slower clip, but they filter opportunities your way that are suited for the time that you have. Because you certainly want to go into an interview being completely, straightforward and upfront with what your capacity is, and if it's not, the job is advertised, I don't think it makes sense to go in there and ask for that kind of switch. But that being said,
mute there.
What?
Sorry about that. I was on mute as I was talking.
I was like, well, I could talk more about flexibility if anybody wants to talk about flexibility. I have a lot to say about that too. I think you can negotiate flexibility once you're in a position, and I think you can try to negotiate flexibility in position. I think it's about, when someone's already taken the time to define a job as a 40-hour-a-week job, it's hard to get to make them kind of think about how to split that time in half. That being said, sometimes people, I do know people who've done successful job share arrangements where you're splitting, you and another person take that job together, and then you're only working 20 to 25 hours a week. But there's a different scenario.
Yeah, and thank you for the plug for FlexJobs too. It's one of those things where, if you kind of know where to look for those part-time roles, it might open up a little bit more. And with FlexJobs, obviously, we post a lot of part-time things. I would also say for anyone looking for the part-time type of jobs, but if there's not a lot, or things, if you're just in an area where there isn't a lot of opportunity for jobs, looking at more national work-from-home jobs, a lot of employers actually don't require a particular location as long as you have a home office and you're located in the U.S. And so that's something to look at too, is sort of work-from-home jobs that don't have a specific location requirement. And that's also something you can find on FlexJobs, of course. But that's something that can open up the possibilities for sure, so that you're not just looking at employers in your area, but looking all over the place. And kind of on the same lines, there was a question about finding a job with flexible hours. And I know you said you have a lot to say about flexibility. So is it difficult, do you think, to find a job with flexible hours? And I know you were talking about in the, the negotiating process when you have that job. How would you, what are some of your tips for negotiating flexible hours with an employer?
So I have a lot of different tips. I talk about that extensively, and there's actually a blog post. I was interviewed on The Broad Experience this week, which is a podcast about women in work, and we went into a whole talk about flexibility, so you could read more both on my website and there about my thoughts on this. But generally, I would say when you're proposing flexibility, you're trying to, I think a lot of people position flexibility in terms of, we'll go to the employer and say, this is what I need for myself and my family, and so I'd like you to just meet that need. And a lot of employers, as much as they even might want to be able to, to help, that's not going to really appeal to their basic needs. They need to get their job done. So the most important way to propose flexibility, or the most important thing to consider in proposing flexibility, is what is the business case, both for you, why is this going to benefit you, and why is this going to benefit them? How is it going to make you a more productive employee and contributor, and how can you ensure them that you're going to get, you're going to deliver on everything that's expected of you within the time that you've outlined. And I think on top of that, I would follow up by saying, it's a process of, like we said, Hermione talks about testing and learning. The flexibility process works similarly. Some things are going to work, some things are not. You can try a flexible situation, and you have to be very willing to, take feedback. Well, I need you in the office on Tuesday afternoons because of X, or I need you to be available at this time because of Y, and, how can you readjust your schedule around that? So I think it requires flexibility to get a true flexible arrangement, is what I would say.
Indeed. And maybe let's just do one more question. We have a lot of great questions here. Basically for people who have a lot of ideas and aren't really sure how to narrow them down, if you're a career changer, you've been out of work for a while and you're looking for that dream job, something you'd really enjoy and love, how do you go about even kind of deciding which path to go down?
Well, I think that I would really advocate this process of like looking out there and figuring out what's interesting to you. And it doesn't really matter whether you start by connecting with someone in person or online, but I think looking around you and just being really attentive to what gets you kind of interested and excited, even when you're seeing, you're reading on your Facebook feed or you're seeing things, that come up in the news, like someone doing something that's really cool and interesting, and there's kind of a light bulb that goes off in your head that says, wow, that's really cool. I think I could see myself doing that, or there's something about it that kind of pulls me in. And, I know that sounds like a really gut-related reaction. It's hard to monitor. It's not quantifiable. But there's an author who I quoted in the presentation, who I had a little picture of in the presentation, whose name I'm horrible at pronouncing, who wrote the book Flow, whose name I should be able to pronounce. But he wrote the book Flow, and it's about, we're most successful in work when we really find, we lose track of time when we find ourselves in the work and we just are very caught up in it, and kind of time flows by really quickly, and we feel very rewarded. And that's not to say that every job, you're going to leave whatever field that you've been in to find a job that's going to, be perfect in every way. There's always going to be some, grunt pieces to work. That's why it's called work. But there is, a satisfaction level that you can hit. And the way that you get to that is by really looking for those signs all around you, really, of things that might really, spark your interest and get you really excited. And follow that lead, like follow that trail. It's out there and it's waiting for you. And, I think the idea that I would want to leave you with is that something that a lot of these authors I talk about handled really nicely in their work, is that change, when we think about career change, at least when I thought about it in the past before I came to the kind of thinking that I've gotten to right now, I think of it as this kind of final process, like I'm moving from, like I said before, the professor to the woman in finance. The professor becomes an investment banker, or that there's these different kind of final paths from A to B. And I think we need to think about it from A to X. There's just lots of different iterations. There are times that you're going to be, your field and your interest in your career change is going to be more iterative than that. And you have to be patient and remember that, there are times you're going to be, you might work internally for a company. There's times you might be working independently on an issue in a field of your choice. It's really a process that is a little bit more gray than that. But there's a lot of freedom and a lot of fluidity in that, which is really exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Raquel, for all of your wonderful work. For anybody who is interested, you can go to raquelellison.com for a lot more information, and we'll be sending out an email within the next 24 hours about more information on the services that you can find there and all of the great information there. And of course, you can also go to FlexJobs.com. This webinar was recorded, so I know a lot of people were asking about the names of the books and the people that Raquel mentioned throughout the presentation, and you'll be able to find all of those at the recording. We'll send a link to that as well. And you can view the whole thing again and get inspired for your job search. So thank you very much, Raquel, for all of your wonderful information today.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for
coming.
And
good luck, everyone.
Yep, good luck. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.